All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with a guest who's been on the show before, but it was in a very different context, and it was a number of years ago. And I think that the cool thing about this one is, I guess, to give some background as to how this particular interview happened. I get a lot of CDs and records and tapes from bands, from labels, from publicists, from all kinds of stuff. Just over the course of doing this podcast, interviewing a lot of musicians, people like giving me their records. A lot of the time, I get good stuff. A lot of the time, I get okay stuff. But the record I got recently was the new album by my guest on this episode. And it's rare that I get a record that I like this much kind of immediately upon listening to it. Like it really, I don't know what it is exactly about it, and we'll talk about it, but something grabbed me about this record. I really dug it, and it's already like it's on my list of favorite local albums of the year for sure. Like there's an instant hit there for me. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself, give a bit of background about what you do, and then we can sort of get into what this is all about. Maybe I can figure out what it is about this record that really grabbed me the way it did, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Sure. Hey, yeah, I'm Michael Falk. I have an alias called Touching, under which I release music. And yeah, I've done a lot of things in music in Winnipeg and beyond, and ran a label for a number of years in the studio, and used to produce Jazz Winnipeg and booked the West End Cultural Center a long time ago. Feels like another lifetime ago at this point. And
Yeah.
yeah, right now I'm producing concerts for the symphony and making music in my basement. So it's it's a good time.
Awesome. Well, I think that you're one of the people in the city who's had your kind of your hands in so many different aspects of the local music community. I mean, like even just what you described there, that quick resume, it's covering off a lot of bases in a lot of different sort of styles and genres and scenes and sort of beyond. So, yeah, I guess you're sort of a rare person in Winnipeg who's been involved in so many different aspects of it, because a lot of people, have been involved in local music for decades even, but it's often sort of within one little circle, within one style of music, one
Yeah,
area of creating, marketing, publicity, whatever music. But you've been all over the place.
I'm a jack of all trades and master of none at this point. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, as far as the music side of things goes, the music you're making. I mean, I think people know you from a lot of different projects over the years. Les Jupes is probably maybe the most widely known in Winnipeg. I think anyway. That's definitely
Mhm.
where I first heard your stuff. But with Touching, how long has this actually been the project you've been working on? I know you have two other records that came out before this one we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Touching started, I guess, back in 2016. We played a few shows and, started writing a new batch of songs, but then became a dad and joined Jazz Winnipeg, and things just kind of stalled out, I guess. And then had to do some other stuff for a while, and but I kept writing, and, so I think for a long time, it was just, me and my friend Alistair would just hang out at the studio, and kind of we'd book these like intensive weekends, or we just like block off 4 or 5 days and just
Cool.
kind of blast off a bunch of stuff. And so over, from 2016 to when we put out that first Touching record during the pandemic, like, we made maybe 150, 175 songs or something. And some of them were crap and a few of them were all right, and that's how it goes. Um and but it was I just felt for a long during that process that I just wanted to become a better writer, and I wanted to try to see if I could, I think there was something that, if we go back to the end of Les Jupes, like the first kind of maybe couple Touching records are me artistically trying to finish that path a little bit, right? I
Okay.
think that the songs, at least to myself, this is my take on them. Other people might feel differently, but it felt like those first two Touching records are just like the natural end to the songwriting path that started with Les Jupes and then didn't get to finish. And so those records are kind of feel like it was like the end of that journey. And so for this record, I was a little bored. That's part of it. I was bored of that path, or maybe like I was not, like I wanted to do something else,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of new music has been inspiring and interesting to me, and a bunch of it came out of my time at Jazz Winnipeg, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that that I booked and that I presented there, and musicians I got to know, and shows I got to see both here and in New York, and
Yeah,
all over the place, and that really kind of just made me think. It's like, oh, like there's you can I can find a, what's the word? I guess I just wanted to take some of those new interests and just see what happened if you funneled them through my brain and through the way I work. And I'm not, I've never claimed to be a jazz musician. I'm definitely not a jazz musician, but I think that there was, there's something in a bunch of that music that, especially some of the weirder modern stuff that is happening right now, where I was just like, well, there's some really cool adventurous stuff here, and I wonder if I can, what can I nick off of this and make it my own in some way. So
yeah,
the record definitely had its roots in me just trying to see like what would happen if I wrote jazz music with MIDI, so it was like me and
sure,
my
sure.
programming bass lines and little keyboard riffs and some drum parts just all on MIDI, and basically drawing these grooves, and then that led to trying to bring them into the real world with people, and then to get on a life of their own. So that's
Cool.
a long roundabout answer maybe, but it's at
No,
least what.
I think that's interesting. The way you said, like, the first two records kind of being an extension of what you were doing with Les Jupes. I think that makes sense as a listener, because I mean, I heard those first two Touching records. Uh, they were good records, but it didn't necessarily grab me the way this one did. And I think it's the same thing with Les Jupes. I like those records, but they didn't really kind of, something about them wasn't what I was looking for as far as
Yeah.
music, for what they were and for the genre they were in, and for, like, the scene they were coming out of. They definitely were successful and effective and everything like that. But this one, I think, that jazz side of things and experimenting with those kind of weirder sounds and more sort of experimental vibes, I think really it feels like what was. I don't want to sound like an asshole and say something was missing from the previous Touching records, but what I wasn't getting, I think, from the Touching
Yeah.
records is now on this one. And my friend Chris Friesen, freaking Snap, has been like evangelizing your records for years now. And
Yeah.
I remember when he was talking about the previous Touching record, Nonstop, I was like, okay, I need to listen to this again. And I did, and it was good, but
Mhm.
I wasn't getting what he was getting. And I think that adding the jazz elements, adding some of these players you have like a murderer's row of local and beyond musicians on this album. Something in that kind of alchemy there really, I think this is what Touching was always, I mean, as a listener, should be. You know what I mean? Like, it's like everything that worked on those previous records has now melded with this jazz thing and this experimental thing, and I really dig it.
Well, thanks so much. I mean, it's the record I'm the most proud of sharing with people. I think that there's, as I've been making it the whole way along, I was like, man, this is weird as fuck. Like, is anyone gonna like this? But I all along I was like, I want to make a record just for me. I'm not going to worry about anything else. And I'm at this point in my life where I'm not, you know, 25 years old anymore and running around playing clubs, and like my life is a little
Yeah,
different, and my artistic priorities are a little different, and I just wanted to kind of just throw everything up in the air and do everything, a 180 from how I'd done it in the past, and yeah, just kind of lean into some of the stuff that I might have kind of kept at bay before, and just like embrace some of the weird shit that I've always liked, and and as a concert presenter, I've tried to support a lot of artists on the fringe, and bring some shows to Winnipeg over the years that might not have happened otherwise, and
yeah,
I think that, but in my own music, I think what you're hearing is fair, and it's a fair assessment that like it's like, yeah, there's good songs, but like it's not it's not pushing over the edge of what you know and and that's, but it was like, what's the word? I think I got to a point where, with this one, I was just like, this, it's been so much fun to make this, because it's been really hard. I had to like teach
yeah,
myself a bunch of new things, and I had to work differently than I ever did. And it took almost a year to finally get comfortable singing over the music. Some of the, singing over some of these songs, and the chord changes and the melodies that were needed were just so different from the way I'd ever worked. And so that took a long time. And like there was a good 6 month period where I was just like bashing my head against the wall, um and which is good, a little bit of struggle is important, right? And but there's there's a hard drive just full of take after take after take of just like some really ugly, some really, some nonsense, just trying to like find a path through the music for me as a singer. And I think I got there, and I think I had a couple of friends really help. Andrew Braun, he used to be in a band called Roca Code.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, him and his partner Laura really helped kind of give a kind of a second push to some of that stuff. I wrote a song with this woman named Olive Louise, who's a singer in New York, and she helped push that song into a direction that I would never have been able to get to on my own. And so, yeah, I think by engaging a different group of collaborators, and bringing in a couple of my jazz pals, and Sean and Curtis, and then also like Dave Quanbury and Alistair Dunlap, who I've been working with for a long time, old friends of mine. But they've always had these chops, but within my music up until now, they hadn't really gotten to like let it rip a bit more. And so I think it also freed them up to showcase what they do a little bit more, and kind of because both of them can hang in that regard. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, the singing part is interesting because I think that is part of what I like about this. Is I think this is you have a unique voice, a unique singing voice, and I mean, it's definitely you hear it and it's you. I don't know, I can't think of anyone else who has that particular sound, and I think it seems like it makes sense naturally being suited to jazzier stuff, just kind of like the tone of it and had you ever attempted anything like that before with dabbling with that vocally?
No, definitely not. Because I mean, I'm not a trained musician, and I think there's been times when I'm just kind of goofing around. I'd be in the tour van, or I'd be at home, or whatever it was, and there's this kind of voice in the back of my head. It's like someday, Mike, you're gonna make a crooner record, and
Well, this is it, I guess.
I love Sinatra and all that, and a lot of that stuff. But I don't I don't come to the table with the musical skill set to be able to kind of just like fall into that.
Yeah.
And for me, it had to come from a different path, and I have to kind of get to the melodies a different way, and so yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe other than that I just had to like kind of hack a different path through the forest to get to that. Maybe there is a little bit like there's some, I don't know what the word is for it, because like as much as like you know some of the songs have like Jitterbug or Scattershot or Feeling Swell have a lot more kind of like jazzier undertones or rhythms, bass lines. Some of the melodies that I'm trying to stick over top of them, sorry, I'm getting over a cold here. Uh, if anything, they're trying to stay out of the way of the music, right? And I think
Right.
that became a real thing that I had to try to learn to do in the context of this music, is that like there's all this really busy rhythmic stuff happening, and all these a lot of harmonic density and a lot of rhythmic density, and I found that if I sung busily, or if I sung something that was too too, what's the word, not too direct of a melody, but too purposeful of a melody, that it would
Okay.
just kind of the whole thing would just collapse on itself a little bit. So I had to almost try to use my voice a bit more like a texture, or like think of the as a my voice sometimes as a harmony with the saxophone, or something that would riff off of what the bass was doing, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it just took a different path than I'd ever gone before, which made it fun.
Yeah, and obviously, I think it paid off trying to do that because it works for sure. Um, with this with this record, is this, now that you have this out, now that this kind of new sound that you've experimented with has been unveiled, is this sort of the direction you're hoping to go going forward with Touching, or is that sort of depending on how
it's
you're
a whole
feeling.
new world, man. I could, the next record could be a Nine Inch Nails,
Right on.
mechanical. I don't know. I think if anything, it's been freeing to just let me like make what I want to make, and you know, um, the rest be damned. And so I think, if anything, the pendulum might start swinging broader and broader in different directions. And because I don't have a bunch of industry stuff behind me at this point. I don't have any, there's, I got a bunch of fans peppered around, you know, that I get to mail records to, which is amazing. But it's not like, I'm not selling out 500 seats in different rooms across the
Yeah.
continent. And so it's, I can kind of just do what I want. And so I'm going to just lean into that. And so yeah, this might be the only one like this, or there might be, maybe there's a run of them. I don't know. I make no promises.
Well, maybe a better way to approach that question then is the experience of doing this, of kind of just being um like having that kind of honest way of just expressing yourself the way that seems like the way to express yourself, rather than sort of doing it to fit a mold. Is that going to be sort of more of the thing going forward? Is just that kind of freedom?
Oh yeah.
Of,
Yeah, I think 100%. And it's not like, the earlier touching stuff is, this like trying to be a
oh,
fit
sure,
form.
sure.
But it was definitely like of a style, and there was like this kind of this challenge to myself to kind of like write a really good, you know, pop song or indie rock song, or like something that
Yeah,
was just, make a good song. And and now I don't know, it's kind of 180, and I just want to be able to just make something, and if it's going to be, you know, distorted flute for 2 minutes, then let's have some distorted flute for 2 minutes. It's all
yeah.
good. So it yeah, I think if anything, I feel like the doors are pretty wide open at this point, and I'm glad about that. It's been kind of liberating.
Yeah, it's a good place to be too. I imagine that the place you are in life too probably helps with that too, right? You're not, I mean, like you said, you're not 25. You're not going around on the road all the time and playing at bars every night and everything like that. So that's got to make it sort of easier to be able to have that longer leeway to experiment.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that the my expectations for myself are different, and what I want to get out of it is different. I'm at a point where I just want to make some art that I'm proud of, um, and if I can find some people that like it, great, and and that's good. So
Yeah, that's a good place to be in, I think. On the back of the CD, I have it right here. I'm looking at it. There's a Head in the Sand logo. Is Head in the Sand back? I mean, because this is your label.
no,
You mentioned off the top,
yeah,
you ran a label for a while, and it seems like this is the first release in quite some time.
Head in the Sand is an absentee landlord. Head in the Sand, it's not really a label anymore. No, like I basically, 2019, like I think the Dave Quanbury record is probably the last thing that we put out as where with another artist, and I think at that point, I could just feel my energy for it was gone. The industry was shifting so much. I didn't have the energy or the capital to be able to figure out how to kind of pivot the company at that point, and I just
Right.
I kind of lost interest to some extent, and so yeah, I mean, Head in the Sand at this point is just a name and a logo, and it is something to put on it to give it something, but it's not, it's
Not
the
a going
company
concern.
the company is still registered, but it's it's a company I do a lot of grant writing for. We got a bunch of grant writing clients, and I do some consulting work, and so it's basically a consultant and grant writing company at this point, and that still has a bit of a distribution deal, right? So I think I still have some of the infrastructure in place from
Cool.
when we were pretty active. So, but yeah, it is yeah, an absentee landlord.
Yeah, I like that. I like that description. I guess it helps too that there are a lot of people who are familiar with previous releases on the label. They know the name, they know the logo. It's familiar to them. That's got to help as well. Just the recognition factor.
Yeah, it definitely. I think that Head in the Sand had a good run for a number of years there, where we put out a couple records each year by you know, some really great Winnipeg artists and some
Hmm.
artists from beyond, you know, from you know, across North America and even Icelandic band um and you know, and I think, you know, there's maybe a 5 or 6 year window there where we, you know, punched above our weight a little bit and people paid a little bit of attention and yeah, and I think, you know, I think once the Jazz Winnipeg stuff started happening, then it just, you know, that was kind of the beginning of the end of that. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
What is this current iteration of Touching look like in a live setting? Is that in the cards? Like, I mean, just because you have so many people you've collaborated with, obviously
Yeah.
you could rearrange the songs and make it, you know, doable in a different context. But is this something that you are planning to perform?
It's a good question. And I will fully admit that I go back and forth on this a whole heck of a lot. You know, up until this record, I haven't really had any interest in performing. I just, you
Yeah.
know, wanted to put the songs and, you know, you know, just didn't want to do it. And last summer, I went and started a new block party that we threw in Brandon called Hatch, and that was the first time Touching had played. And we played 4 or 5 of these songs off this record
Oh, cool.
at that time, and yeah, so I put together a band that can, you know, that can pull these off, and so yeah, Ben Rammer was playing drums, Alistair was playing bass, Sean Irvine from the record was playing sax and flute, and Andrew Braun, who's also on the record, was playing guitar and keyboard. So yeah, really killer band, and they nailed it, and I think we did a pretty good job. And I think we all would like to do it again. And I think we're just kind of, there's not a lot of urgency, and I think we'll play a show. I just don't know what it'll be yet. I think we want it to be the right thing where we can, you know, um, yeah, feel good about the room and where we're at and have a good time. But I will fully admit that it's you know, I'm kind of like a old man in music scene land now, and that it's a different, you know, it's a different thing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, um, yeah,
But the luxury of that is that you can choose sort of the right setting, the right context for these to be presented, because in the old man music scene, that's allowed, right? I mean, you know, you don't have to be playing every night. You can pick your spots and make sure it's going to be the best way to have this stuff heard by the people who you want to hear it.
yep, exactly. So yeah, I'm sure that something will work out this summer. So we'll see what that is yet. But yeah.
Cool, cool. And so, how can people hear this? I mean, it's out now, officially in all the various platforms. Where would you send someone to find out more information about, you know, whether they want to get a physical copy, whether they want to stream it, all that stuff? What's the best source for all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bandcamp is great. It's on, you know, and our website is wearetouching.com. And it's on, you can order the digital album or CDs on the website. And then it's on all the digital platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and Deezer and SoundCloud and all that stuff. So anywhere you go to find music, you should be able to find it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is this just on CD or is there an LP version as well?
There is no LP at this time. I think it was just we're doing a couple radio campaigns, you know, the one that you got from Orange Grove,
Yeah, yeah.
and so we, you know, we made CDs for those campaigns and have a few left over. So, but yeah, I think it just felt like if we'll do vinyl, if there's a tour, we'll do vinyl. But
That makes sense.
if there's no tour, then yeah, laying
Makes
out
complete sense.
laying out 5 grand for a bunch of records to sit in your basement is
Definitely, definitely.
yeah, was
Yeah,
good.
it was cool that Orange Grove sent this to me too, because I mean I get all kinds of jazz records from them, and this was almost a surprise because I mean it was like, oh, Touching, why
Yeah,
why is this? But it fits. It makes total sense that this is kind of an experimental jazz thing. A lot of the albums I've got from them are traditional jazz, but a lot of it's kind of more weird too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like Ernesto, he's a great dude, and he's got broad tastes, and he, you know, and I've you know, I've been working with a number of jazz artists behind the scenes for a number of years now. Like Jocelyn Gould and John
Yeah.
Gordon, and um, and so I've sent a bunch of clients his way, and I've always thought that he did good work for them, and that he was actually getting like real radio play and real reviews, and it was helping make a dent for artists, um and so yeah, when I was thinking about this record, and I thought that there was enough kind of jazz adjacent stuff on it that maybe it was worth a shot to do a campaign with them, because it's like there's the traditional jazz stations aren't going to give it the time of day, right? It's way too weird for that. But I think that there's a whole bunch of you know my time at Jazz Winnipeg, what I really loved, almost more than anything, was that there's this community of music fans out there that are so open-minded and so positive and so like embracing of such diverse and like artistically broad stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'd go out to Winter Jazz in New York, and the agents that I'd be working with that were repping different kinds of artists, and I think about Chris Weller and the little scene he's got in Chicago, and it's not so little actually. He reps Mackay McCraven and Bad Plus and stuff like that, and all these people were just like, I'd worked in the music industry for a long time, and I was meeting a bunch of people who were like my favorite people. Like, these were people that I really loved working with, that I've had a lot of respect for. I think about like Rainbow Robert, who used to run the Vancouver Jazz Festival, and Andrew Jackson in Halifax, and Moran at Jazz Montreal and Montreal Jazz Fest, and like the people that I got to work with those years were phenomenal. And so I think that and they all had such broad tastes. We could talk about hip hop, and we could talk about ambient stuff, and we could
Yeah.
talk about traditional jazz, and we could talk about new stuff, and we could talk about old stuff, and it just felt like they were all really broad music lovers. And so I found that that's kind of what this record is. It's a record for people that don't mind going deep and broad, and so it just felt like Orange Grove was the right crew to help bring those to people. I did this interview a couple weeks ago, this guy in Mexico City. Like, we did a 45-minute interview where he wanted to talk through every song on the record and like go deep into everything, and he was just like obsessed with it. And it was like, the whole record was blowing his mind, and it was just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I've done you know indie rock campaigns for years, and with Lejup and Touching, and one with the other bands, the records that we put out, and I never had anyone kind of connect so deeply with the music and so passionately, and just be like so fired up to want to just talk through everything. And that's awesome. I wouldn't have made that connection without Orange Grove, and it was cool. Like, those are the kind of people I'm excited to get to meet. So
Yeah, yeah, that's who you want to hear your record. Someone who's gonna take it in that deeply, for sure. The good thing about this being a podcast is, someone could hear it the day it comes out. At which case, the record's still very new, or they could hear it a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. What's the best way to sort of follow up on what you're doing as Touching, on social media or elsewhere? Because maybe maybe you have something new by the time someone hears this, if they
yeah,
hear it well after the fact.
if you good listeners are in the year 2040 and just discovering this, then let's talk.
I'll probably
No,
still be doing this podcast by then. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I mean, I'm on all the social media channels, and the handle is We Are Touching, kind of across the board. And then, sorry. But I think if you're keen and you really dig what I'm doing, and want to go along for the ride, then there's an email newsletter, and we've got a couple thousand people on it, and
Cool.
I send out stories from the making of the record. I send out, I give the list new music before anyone else gets it, and try to, you don't get a ton of emails, but I try to make sure the ones you get are have some good meat on them, and give you a little, a bit of a deeper window into, what makes me tick as an artist. And so you can sign up for the newsletter on the website. So that's I'd say if you really dig what I'm doing, that's the best place to be. But the social media channels are all great. There's little videos and little snippets and all kinds of stuff that we post. And It's the modern age, man.
It is. Right
We're
on.
everywhere and nowhere all at once.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.